My name is Maya, I'm 32 years old, and I work as a nurse practitioner. Last night, I received a text that changed everything. 7 words that made me question every relationship I thought I could trust. What happened next? Well, let me just say that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. The notification sound cut through the silence of my apartment like a blade. I was stirring honey into my tea, watching the golden swirls dissolve, when my phone buzzed against the granite countertop. The vibration seemed to echo longer than usual, as if the device itself knew what was coming. Family group chat. 7 new messages. My stomach dropped before I even read the first word. We hadn't used the family group chat in months, not since Dad's birthday, when everyone pretended things were normal. The smell of chamomile from my mug suddenly felt cloying. Too sweet. Mom, we've been talking as a family. Mom, we think it's best if we take some time apart. Mom, please don't contact any of us for a while. Sarah, this is really hard, but we all agree. Dad, your uncle will come by tomorrow to help us pack our things. Michael, sorry it has to be this way. Mom, we need space to heal. The mug slipped from my fingers, ceramic shattering against the kitchen floor. Hot tea splashed across my bare feet, but I barely felt the burn. I read the messages again, then again, my vision blurring at the edges. The words rearranged themselves into different configurations, but the meaning stayed the same. My family was leaving me. I sank onto the couch, phone trembling in my hands. Outside, the first drops of rain began tapping against the windows, a gentle percussion that would soon become a downpour. The sound reminded me of Sunday mornings when we'd all pile into the living room, fighting over the remote while Mom made pancakes. Sarah would always steal the syrup. Michael would complain about everything we watched. Dad would fall asleep in his recliner by noon. That was before the money became an issue. Before I became the solution to everyone's problems. 3 years ago, when Dad lost his job and Mom's medical bills started piling up, I'd stepped in without hesitation. The direct deposits started small, just enough to cover the mortgage. Then Sarah's college tuition. Michael's car payment. Mom's treatments. Before I knew it, I was supporting all of them, and somehow that had become the expectation rather than the gift I'd intended it to be. But I'd never complained. Family takes care of family. That's what Dad always said. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Pete. Pete. Hey kiddo. I'll be there around 10 a.m. tomorrow. This won't take long. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to call him, to ask what I'd done wrong, to beg him to explain why everyone had suddenly decided I was toxic. But another part of me, a part that had been growing stronger over the past few months, felt something else entirely. Relief. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the roof with increasing intensity. I walked to the window and pressed my palm against the cool glass, watching the water streak down in chaotic patterns. In the reflection, I could see my own face, tired, confused, but not as devastated as I should have been. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I should have been more grateful for their presence in my life, more devastated by their absence. Maybe I should have fought harder to keep them close instead of just writing checks and hoping that would be enough. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. The numbers glowed back at me in neat, organized rows. Automatic transfers scheduled for the first of every month. Dad's mortgage, $2,800. Mom's medical expenses, $1,200. Sarah's student loans, $650. Michael's car and insurance, $480. Groceries and utilities for the house, $800. $5,930 every month for the past 3 years. Over $200,000 total. My finger hovered over the Cancel All Transfers button. The smart thing would be to wait, to think this through, to maybe call Mom in a few days and try to work things out. The mature thing would be to respect their wishes and give them space while continuing to support them financially, because that's what family does. But as I stood there in my empty apartment, listening to the rain and thinking about all the Sunday mornings that would never come again, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. They weren't asking for space. They were asking for my money, without my presence. I pressed the button. All recurring transfers have been canceled. The confirmation message appeared just as a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed immediately by a crack of thunder that shook the building. The storm was directly overhead now, and in its chaos, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Tomorrow, Uncle Pete would come to pack their things. Tonight, I would sleep better than I had in months. But as I turned away from the window, my phone rang. The caller ID made my blood freeze. Sarah Mobile. She never called this late. She never called at all anymore, not unless she needed something. My finger trembled as I reached for the answer button because somehow I knew that whatever she was about to tell me would change everything I thought I understood about why my family really wanted me gone. I let the phone ring 3 more times before answering, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sarah's breathing was ragged on the other end, like she'd been running or crying or both. You actually did it. Her voice was barely a whisper, but I could hear the shock threading through every word. The transfers. You really canceled them. You told me not to contact you. I'm respecting your wishes. I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. I figured that included financial contact too. A long pause. Rain lashed against the windows with renewed fury, and somewhere in the distance, a car alarm wailed. The sound felt appropriate. Everything was falling apart at once. You don't understand, Sarah said finally. We didn't. God, this is so messed up. We didn't want this. Then why did you send those messages? Because, her voice cracked. Because Mom said if we didn't, you'd find out about the baby. The words hit me like ice water. What baby? Sarah's sob came through the phone so clearly I could almost see her doubled over, probably sitting on the edge of her dorm room bed like she used to when she'd call home crying about failed exams or broken hearts. But this wasn't about grades or boys. Mine, she whispered. I'm pregnant. For months. And the father is married. I sank back onto the couch, my mind reeling. Sarah was 21, a junior in college, studying to be a teacher. She'd always been the responsible one, the one who called Mom every Sunday and remembered everyone's birthdays and never missed curfew in high school. Sarah. His wife found out last week. She threatened to go to the university, to ruin everything. Mom said the only way to protect me was to cut ties with you before you discovered the truth and judged us for it. The words tumbled out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for weeks. She said you'd never understand, that you'd think less of me, that you'd probably cut off the money anyway once you knew. Thunder crashed overhead, so loud it seemed to shake the building's foundation. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, trying to process what she was telling me. Why would Mom think I'd judge you? Because of what you said about Michael. My stomach dropped. 6 months ago, Michael had gotten arrested for drunk driving. When he'd called asking me to bail him out, I'd been furious, not just about the arrest, but about the pattern of irresponsibility that led to it. I'd paid the bail, covered his legal fees, but I'd also told him he needed to grow up and start making better choices. That's completely different, Sarah. Michael was being reckless and could have killed someone. You're dealing with a complicated situation that. Mom said you'd see it as another family member screwing up and costing you money. The prenatal care, the delivery, maybe helping with childcare if I want to finish school. She said you were already getting tired of supporting all of us. The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth in it. I had been feeling overwhelmed by the constant financial pressure, the way every family gathering somehow turned into a discussion of who needed what. But tired of supporting them? No. Tired of feeling like an ATM instead of a sister and daughter? Absolutely. So instead of talking to me about it, you all decided to just disappear? It wasn't supposed to be forever. Sarah's voice was getting smaller. Mom said we'd give it a few months, let things settle down, then maybe reach out again. She thought if we took a break from the money, you'd be happier, and when we came back, everything would be better. I laughed, but there was no humor in it, while still keeping the direct deposits going. We didn't know you'd cancel them so fast. Mom thought. She thought you'd keep sending money even if we weren't talking, because that's what you've always done. You've always taken care of us no matter what. The rain was starting to ease, but the damage was already done. Water had found its way through a crack in the window frame, leaving a dark stain on the sill that would probably never come out. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. "Where are you now?" I asked. "Still at school. But I'm supposed to come home tomorrow. Uncle Pete is picking me up after he comes to your place." She paused. "What are you going to do?" I looked around my apartment, really looked at it for the first time in months. It was beautiful, spacious, filled with expensive furniture and art I'd bought but never really appreciated because I was always worried about the next family crisis, the next bill, the next emergency that would require my intervention. When was the last time I'd had friends over? When was the last time I'd gone on a date without calculating how much it would cost and whether that money should go to my family instead? "I don't know," I said honestly. "But Sarah, you should have told me about the baby. You should have trusted me." "I wanted to. I almost called you so many times, but Mom said." Mom was wrong. The words came out harder than I intended. She was wrong about me, and she was wrong to make this decision for all of us. A new sound cut through the diminishing rain, the rumble of a truck engine in the parking lot below. I walked to the window and peered down through the darkness. A familiar red pickup was pulling into a space near the building entrance. Uncle Pete, 12 hours early. "Sarah, I have to go." "Wait, please. What should I tell Mom? About the money, about everything?" I watched Pete climb out of his truck, moving with the deliberate slowness of someone who didn't want to be here. He stood in the rain for a moment, looking up at my building, and even from 4 floors up, I could see the slump of his shoulders. "Tell her we'll talk when she's ready to be honest with me. All of you." I hung up before Sarah could respond and walked to the front door. Pete's knock came exactly 60 seconds later, 3 sharp raps, just like when I was a kid and he'd come to pick me up for fishing trips or baseball games. Back when family meant something different than it did now. I opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, soaked from the rain, holding a set of keys I recognized. My parents' house keys. "You're early," I said. Pete looked older than I remembered, his gray hair plastered to his skull, his weathered face creased with something that might have been regret. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well get this over with." He stepped inside without being invited, water dripping from his jacket onto my hardwood floors. For a moment, we just stood there, uncle and nephew, separated by years of family politics and unspoken resentments. "They sent you to collect their things," I said. "But they're not here." Pete's eyes swept the apartment, taking in the family photos on the mantel, the gifts they'd given me over the years, the evidence of a life built around people who had just walked away. "I know. I'm not here for their stuff." "Then why are you here?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, thick and cream-colored, with my name written across the front in my mother's careful handwriting. The paper was slightly damp from the rain, but the ink hadn't run. "Because there's something else you need to know before you decide whether to forgive us or write us off forever." I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. Whatever was inside felt like it might change everything, and I wasn't sure I was ready for any more revelations tonight. But as Pete turned to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at me with eyes that held 30 years of family secrets. "Your mother's cancer came back," he said quietly. 3 weeks ago. She didn't want you to know because she was afraid you'd think she was just trying to guilt you into staying. But the treatments, they're not going to be covered by insurance this time." The envelope slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo through the sudden silence of my apartment. I stared at the envelope on the floor for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Pete had left without another word, and the silence in my apartment was deafening. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving only the occasional drip from the gutters and the distant hum of traffic on wet streets. My hands were shaking as I picked up the envelope and tore it open. Inside were 2 things, a folded letter in Mom's handwriting and a medical report with letterhead from St. Mary's Oncology Center. The date on the report was 3 weeks ago, just like Pete had said. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Metastatic. Treatment options limited. The words blurred together as I tried to process them. Stage 4. The same diagnosis she'd beaten 5 years ago, Except this time the prognosis section used words like palliative care and quality of life instead of remission and recovery. I unfolded the letter with trembling fingers. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, then Pete has told you about the cancer, and I suppose there's no point in pretending anymore. I've been trying to protect you from this news because I know how you are. You'll want to fix everything, to throw money at the problem until it goes away. But this time, money can't fix it. The experimental treatment Dr. Martinez wants to try costs $180,000. Insurance won't cover it because it's still in trials. Even if we had the money, there's only a 15% chance it would give me more than a few extra months. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that 15% is better than nothing, that you'd pay anything for even one more Christmas together. And that's exactly why I couldn't tell you. Because you'd bankrupt yourself trying to save me, and I can't live with that guilt. The truth is, I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting, tired of treatments that make me sicker than the disease, tired of watching my family walk on eggshells around me. I want to spend whatever time I have left being your mother, not your patient. But I also know that if I told you this, you'd never let me make that choice. You'd insist on the treatment, on fighting until the very end, because that's who you are. You've been taking care of all of us for so long that you've forgotten how to let us take care of ourselves. So, I made a terrible decision. I convinced your father and siblings that we needed to step back, to give you space to live your own life. I told them you were getting overwhelmed by our constant needs, that you deserved better than being our perpetual safety net. I thought if we disappeared for a while, you'd finally have a chance to be happy. I never meant for it to hurt you. I never meant for you to think we didn't love you or want you in our lives. I just wanted to give you permission to stop carrying all of us on your shoulders. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for the pain. And I'm sorry that by the time you read this, it might be too late to fix what I've broken. All my love.
Mom.
P.S. The baby Sarah is carrying? It's yours to love, not yours to judge. She's scared and needs her big sister, not her benefactor. I read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Then I was moving, grabbing my keys and jacket, not even bothering to lock the door behind me as I ran for the stairs. The elevator would take too long, and I needed to move, needed to do something with the energy that was crackling through my veins like electricity. The drive to my parents' house took 23 minutes through empty streets slick with rain. I'd made this trip hundreds of times over the years, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, every red light felt like a countdown timer, every mile marker a reminder of how much time I might have already lost. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but I could see the flicker of television light through the living room curtains. I sat in my car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to figure out what I was going to say. How do you apologize for canceling someone's lifeline? How do you forgive someone for lying about dying? I didn't knock. I still had my key, and this was still my family, whatever that meant now. The front door opened with the same soft creak it had made since I was a teenager sneaking in past curfew. Mom was on the couch, wrapped in the blue Afghan Sarah had crocheted for her last Christmas. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile, but her eyes were alert and focused on me as I stood in the doorway dripping rainwater onto her hardwood floors. "You got my letter," she said. It wasn't a question. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice came out rougher than I intended, thick with emotions I couldn't name. "Because you would have tried to save me." She patted the couch beside her, the same gesture she'd made when I was 8 years old and had scraped my knee, when I was 16 and my first girlfriend had broken my heart, when I was 25 and had gotten my first promotion, and wanted to share the news with someone who would understand what it meant. I sat down beside her, and she immediately reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold and thinner than they used to be, but her grip was still strong. "Mom, that experimental treatment has a 15% success rate and would cost more than most people make in 3 years. She squeezed my hand. "I've done the math, sweetheart. I've run the numbers 100 different ways, and they all come out the same. I have maybe 6 months if I do nothing, maybe 8 or 9 if I do everything. Is 3 extra months worth destroying your financial future? That's not your decision to make." "Yes, it is." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I'm your mother, not your responsibility. I've been letting you take care of all of us for so long that I forgot that distinction, but I remember it now. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the house settle around us. This was the house where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where I'd brought my first girlfriend to meet my parents, where I'd announced my college acceptance and my first job offer and every major milestone of my adult life. It was also the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 3 years, the house that had become another line item in my monthly budget instead of a home. I canceled the transfers, I said finally. I know, Sarah called. Mom shifted on the couch to face me more directly. Are you angry? I thought about it, really thought about it. Was I angry? Yes, but not in the way I'd expected. I wasn't angry about the money or the lies or even the cancer. I was angry about the time we'd wasted, the conversations we hadn't had, the distance that had grown between us while I was busy trying to solve everyone's problems. I'm angry that you thought I'd choose money over family, I said. I'm angry that you thought I'd judge Sarah for being human. And I'm angry that you've been carrying this alone for 3 weeks instead of letting me help you figure it out. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. You know what I'm angry about? I'm angry that I raised a daughter who's so determined to fix everything that he forgot how to just be present for the people he loves. The truth of that hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time I'd visited just to visit, not because someone needed something? When was the last time I'd called just to talk, not to check on bills or problems or crises? I want to restart the transfers, I said.
No.
Mom.
No.
She said it with the same tone she'd used when I was 7 and wanted ice cream for breakfast. We're going to figure out a different way. Your father is going back to work part-time. Sarah is going to move back home after the baby comes, so we can help with childcare while she finishes school online. Michael is going to contribute to household expenses instead of just taking from them. And the medical bills? We'll manage. There are payment plans, charity programs, ways to make it work that don't involve you sacrificing your entire future for my past. I wanted to argue, to insist that I could afford it, that I wanted to help. But looking at her face, really looking at it, not just seeing the patient or the problem but seeing my mother, I realized she was right. I had been trying to fix everything instead of just being there for anything. What if we compromise? I said. What if I help, but not as the sole solution? What if we all figure this out together as a family? Mom considered this, her head tilted in the way it always did when she was thinking through a complex problem. What did you have in mind? I'll cover half the medical expenses that insurance doesn't pay. Dad and Michael split the other half between them, even if it means payment plans or extra work. Sarah moves back home like you said, but I help with baby expenses, not because I have to, but because I want to be an uncle. And the house. You and Dad take back the mortgage. I'll help if there's an emergency, but this is your home, not my investment property. Mom was quiet for a long time, and I could see her working through the implications, the pride and practicality warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded. There's one more condition, she said. You have to promise me that you'll start living your own life. Date someone. Travel somewhere. Buy something ridiculous just because you want it. Stop being our safety net and start being our daughter. Deal, I said and meant it. We talked until sunrise, really talked about everything and nothing. About Sarah's pregnancy and her fears about being a single mother. About Michael's struggles with feeling like a failure compared to his successful older sister. About Dad's depression after losing his job and how it had affected the whole family. About Mom's cancer and her fears and her hopes for whatever time she had left. When the sun finally came up, painting the living room in soft gold light, I realized something had shifted. The weight I'd been carrying for 3 years, the weight of being responsible for everyone else's happiness and security, had lifted. Not because I cared less, but because I'd finally learned the difference between helping and enabling, between love and obligation. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Uncle Pete said you and Mom talked. Are we okay? I looked at Mom, who was dozing against my shoulder, and typed back, We're family. We're going to figure it out. And for the first time in years, I believed that was true. 3 months later, I would dance at Sarah's baby shower, holding my nephew while she opened gifts from friends and family who had rallied around her instead of judging her. 6 months later, I would hold Mom's hand as she passed away peacefully in hospice care, surrounded by all of us, her medical bills manageable and her conscience clear. A year later, I would walk Sarah down the aisle when she married a good man who loved both her and her son, and I would give a speech about the difference between supporting someone and carrying them. But that morning, sitting in the house where I grew up with my mother's head on my shoulder and the sun streaming through windows I no longer paid for, I simply felt grateful. Grateful for the mess and the complications and the beautiful, imperfect reality of being part of a family that had finally learned how to love each other without keeping score. The direct deposits were gone, but we were still here. And that, I realized, had always been enough.